I first decided to visit my friend Sarah's house, I didn't think it would be such a big deal. We had been friends since our first semester at college, and for the last 2 years, we'd spent almost every day together, studying, sharing notes, laughing at our own silly jokes. But every time I suggested hanging out at her place, she hesitated. She'd always say, maybe another time, and then quickly change the topic. So when she finally invited me to her home that sunny Saturday afternoon, I felt both excited and strangely nervous. Sarah lived about 40 minutes away from campus, in a quiet neighborhood filled with blooming trees and smiling neighbors who waved at each other. I remember clutching a small gift bag in my hands, a candle and a card for her mom, as I walked up the front porch steps. My mom always taught me never to visit someone's house empty-handed. The door opened before I could knock twice. "Emily," Sarah exclaimed, pulling me into a hug. "You made it." She looked relieved, almost as if she wasn't sure I'd actually come. I smiled, handing her the bag. "Of course I came. Thanks for inviting me." The inside of her house felt immediately warm, not just in temperature but in spirit. The faint scent of vanilla cookies drifted from the kitchen. A piano stood near the window, and there were framed photographs everywhere, of Sarah as a child, of family gatherings, of a man I guessed was her father. I paused when I noticed his picture had a small candle beside it. Sarah caught my glance and said softly, "That's Dad. He passed away 3 years ago." I nodded gently. "I'm sorry." Before I could say more, a calm voice called from the kitchen, "Sarah, is that Emily?" "Yes, Mom," she answered. "Come on, Em, she's been excited to meet you." I followed her into the kitchen, where a woman stood by the counter arranging fruit on a platter. "Mrs. Thompson" turned toward me, her smile graceful and genuine. Her hair was streaked with silver, tied back neatly, and her eyes, warm hazel, seemed to carry both kindness and a quiet sadness. "Emily, I've heard so much about you," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. "I'm glad you're finally here. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Thompson," I said shyly. "Your home is beautiful." She chuckled lightly. "Oh, it's just a little messy. You should have seen it when Sarah was a kid. Toys everywhere." The three of us laughed, and for the first hour, it was all easy conversation, college stories, silly memories, future plans. But underneath it all, I sensed something heavy between Sarah and her mom. The way they avoided eye contact sometimes. The way Mrs. Thompson's laughter faded too quickly. I couldn't explain it, but I could feel it. After lunch, Sarah left for a quick errand, something about picking up her brother from a friend's place, and I stayed behind, insisting on helping Mrs. Thompson with the dishes. "You don't have to, honey," she said kindly. "I don't mind," I replied. "I like helping. Besides, I owe you for the meal." It was amazing. As we stood by the sink, I noticed her eyes flickering toward a family picture pinned on the fridge. It showed Sarah, a young boy, and her late husband, all smiling in a summer field. "That was the last trip we took together," she said quietly, almost to herself. Before everything changed, I stayed silent, unsure if she wanted to continue. She turned to me and asked suddenly, "Emily, do you get along with your mother?" The question caught me off guard. I hesitated before answering. "It's complicated," I admitted. "She's always been distant. After my dad left, she became colder. We live together but sometimes it feels like we're miles apart." Mrs. Thompson nodded slowly, drying her hands on a towel. "I understand that more than you think." She invited me to sit at the kitchen table, and we talked for what felt like hours. She told me about how Sarah's father had been her best friend, how losing him shattered her in ways she didn't expect. "I tried to stay strong for my kids," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But grief, it doesn't leave easily. It makes you say things you don't mean, push away the people you love most." I wasn't always the kind of mother Sarah deserved. Her honesty touched me deeply. I could see the pain she carried and how much she wanted to make things right. "You're trying," I said softly. "That's what matters." She looked at me with surprise, then smiled faintly. "You remind me of Sarah when she was younger. Kind, but always feeling like she had to carry the weight of others' pain." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant laughter of children outside. Then she added, "Thank you for listening. Most people don't." I smiled. Sometimes listening is all someone needs. When Sarah returned, she found us laughing over old photo albums, sharing stories like old friends. "What's going on here?" she asked, mock suspicious. "Your mom's been telling me your embarrassing childhood stories," I teased. Sarah rolled her eyes, pretending to groan. "I should have known this would happen." Later that evening, as I was getting ready to leave, Mrs. Thompson walked me to the door. The golden sunset painted everything in soft light. "Emily," she said gently, "I don't usually say this to people I've just met, but thank you for being good to my daughter, and for seeing me beyond my mistakes." Her words caught in my throat. I felt tears prick my eyes. You don't have to thank me. You've been so kind, and you're a wonderful mom, even if you don't always feel it. She shook her head slightly, smiling. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. As I stepped off the porch, I turned back once more. She stood there in the doorway, framed by the soft light from inside, waving at me like someone who had just been reminded that love could return, even after loss. The next week, Sarah told me something that made me stop in my tracks. You know, after you left, Mom said she hasn't felt that peaceful in years. She said you reminded her what it feels like to connect again. I didn't know what to say. All I could do was smile through the warmth that filled my chest. That simple visit had somehow helped both of us, me, who longed for a mother's comfort, and her, who longed to give it again. Months later, I visited again. This time, the air in the house felt lighter. There was laughter between Sarah and her mom that hadn't been there before. And when Mrs. Thompson hugged me at the door, she whispered, "You're always welcome here, Emily. This house is yours too." As I drove home that day, I realized something important. Sometimes we walk into someone's home thinking we're just visiting, but we end up helping them, and ourselves, heal in ways we didn't expect. What my friend's mom did wasn't shocking in a dramatic way. It was shocking in the way true kindness always is, quiet, unexpected, and deeply human. And I will never forget that day, the warmth of her words, and how one afternoon in a stranger's kitchen made me feel less alone in the world.